Hello and welcome to a quick Excel tutorial here, led by myself, Omar Mansour. Um, this should be accompanied with a sheet that I created called Excel Training. We'll start off with the references page. Um, on this sheet, you can see that we have 11 vendors with the amount that we have spent at those vendors for 2 years, the current year and the prior year. Obviously, 2020 should probably be lower than 2019 because we're only partway through, but these are the numbers we have, right? First thing you notice right off the bat is that our table has a kind of a blank row here for some reason. Not sure why that's happening. So what we can do is we can quickly delete that. And the shortcut key to do that is to hold Shift and the space bar. And then you can right click on that and you can navigate to delete right here. And there you go, you've removed that extra. As you can see, so what I did just there is Control Z, which is undo. You'll become well acquainted with that in the future. So what you notice here is that I can skip from A3 down to A13 really quickly, and I'm using Control up and down. This works for continuous data, right? So if there's a space like this, then you can't get down to 11 without arrowing down again. So we're going to go ahead and delete that again. And then let's say that we want to add a total for the spend for each year. So what we would do is we would do equals sum, open parentheses, and then we can select this whole area here by Control and arrow up, or Control arrow Shift up, and you get that extra header row in there, so you want to go down one. And then you have your sum formula. It should give you a total. A real quick shortcut for this is to press the buttons while holding Alt. Press the button equals, the equal sign, and that should give you that sum again. So what we can do from here is we can actually copy or Control C that formula. We can go over this cell for 2019 and we can do paste or Control V, right? So now we have built a total for both 2020 and 2019. What we can do now is we can start kind of giving some more metrics here to start analyzing these differences for the vendor. So for example, let's do something where we create a percentage of the total. All right, so let's go ahead and label that. Okay, so percentage of the total for 2020, we can go ahead and arrow over 2 times to vendor one's total and do a slash or division. And we go back down here to the total and press enter, and we get the percentage of the total. So what this is telling us is for 2020 for vendor one, out of all of our spending for the year, vendor one made up about 8.7%. Now let's go ahead and copy this down using Control C. Go all the way down to the bottom of the data set. Again, I do that using our kind of our navigation shortcut here, which is Control. You hold Control and you click, press the arrow down button. And then you can Control V for paste and Shift Control up to select the whole area so that you can press Control V again. And we've now pasted this formula in the whole data set essentially. Now you're noticing a divide by 0 here. This is a common error. When you divide a number by 0, Excel doesn't know what to do and it prints out hashtag divide by 0. And the reason why this is happening is, even though it worked for our first row for vendor one, in Excel there's such a thing as relative references, which means essentially you put these 2 references on the page somewhere, and then if you copy and paste those 2 references in the cell down one, then everything shall move down with it. So it actually is working the way you want it for the numerator, but not working the way you want it for the denominator, right? So what we then need to do is we need to anchor B15 so that it stays calculating the denominator as the 140,840, or the total for vendor spend for the year. The way we do that is we press the F4 button. Okay, so I pressed the F4 button and I'm going to press enter. So no change for that particular calculation, but when I copy this and I Control Shift down and I press Control V for paste, I now have a calculation that works both for the numerator and the denominator. The total here is 100%, as you would expect, so I'm going to go ahead and bold that. So you could bold that by simply clicking here, or you can also get into some fancy keyboard strokes where you press Alt, H, and 1, and that's how you bold that. So let's say we want to easily make this kind of do the same calculation here for 2019. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it. Now, right off the bat, you can tell something is kind of weird here because our total is not 100%, right? The whole point of this is to get a percentage of the total. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to press F2, which lets you peek into the formula and see where we went wrong here. So right off the bat, you can tell your denominator is incorrect. Your denominator is anchored at B15, which is a problem because you want the 2019 total, which is in C15. So the way to do this is actually you can revise the formula so you only have to draft a formula once. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to go and think this through, right? So these dollar signs, they anchor what follows them, right? So this says, I ain't moving from B even if you go to the right. And this says, I'm not moving from 15 even if you go up or down. Technically, we only really need to anchor row 15 here. We don't really have to anchor column B. So I'm going to delete the dollar sign before B. And I'm going to press enter. Then I'm going to go ahead and paste this again. Now we can see 100 here, which is looking real nice. And we can, when we peek into these formulas, it's working the way we wanted. So we wrote one formula, but it worked for both columns because of how thoughtful we were about anchoring the rows, and just the rows, not both the rows and the columns. I'm going to go ahead and bold this again to paste it over it. Now I say we should do something else here. Why don't we do a running total, right? A cumulative total as we go down the list. So let's say we're gonna put some titles here. So let's say cumulative dollars. And the way to do this is to sum, right? So you're going to want to use the sum formula. So you can actually use a plus or an equals. Doesn't really matter. So you can use a sum formula here. And the goal here is to, as you go down the list, to add more of the spend by vendor, right? So in F4, we really just want the $12,256. But then in F5, we're going to want the $12,256 plus vendor 2's total of $2,293, right, combined into one number. So the way to do this is to actually create a range that you want to sum, but you want to anchor the first number being summed. So as you paste this down, that doesn't change, but then the second number in the index range is going to increase, and you're going to have a cumulative total. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to anchor the 4, because I don't want us changing the rows at all. We want that to stay the same, but we don't mind so much if the columns shift to the right as we paste to the right. Okay. So that's working as expected, right? Because we just wanted the 12,256. But as we go down here, we should get to this number, which is like 14 something, 14.5, because now we're growing essentially the range that's being summed, right? So in each formula, you can see that we're growing the range because B4 is blocked, but we allow this to continue going down as we pace down, right? And your check to this is at is it 140,840 for the total on the last row, which it is, so that's great. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to copy this over to the next column so that we can get the cumulative total for 2019. Now, this also appears to have worked. This ties to this, right? The total cumulative as calculated in column G is tying to the total in column C, the source data. Then I think we can add one more useful metric here to get a sense of how we're spending. We'll take these titles again. So this is a cool way to say, hey, these are actually the same type of calculation. They're just split up for 2 different years, right? So we put up this box here. This is the same type of calculation, but they're split up for 2 years. So you have to just kind of, it's basically very similar to what we did to get the total for the year, is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take the cumulative number by row, and then we're going to divide it by the denominator of the total. What should we lock here, right? Because we know we're going to be using this in column H and I. So again, I would suggest that the proper way to do this would be, let's go ahead and only lock the row number or 15. So instead of using, manually punching in dollar signs, I'm going to go back to F4, right? Because I've shown you that when you click F4 once, it locks both dimensions of the reference. But if you click it twice, then it cycles through kind of different ways of locking essentially your reference. So right now, this is only locking the row, but not the column. If I press it again, now it's locking the column, but not the row. If I press it again, we go back to where we started. So it would be the second option in this case, which was to lock the row only. So we press that. And then I'm going to bring this down and paste it all around, right? So we have 100% here, 100% here, right? And you get to see your cumulative spend by vendor. Another fun thing we could do is we could add a column to the right of this, and we could rank our vendors for 2020. So the way to do that is you can highlight this column and click Insert, and we'll type rank here. So you can do, you can copy formatting by using this format painter. So if you leave your cursor in kind of where the formatting you like, and you click that, and then you click where you want that formatting to go, it'll copy that formatting over, right? So now we're going to use a rank function. So we're going to do equals rank. We'll use rank average, okay? And we're going to reference the number. As you can see, just below the formula here, it tells you kind of what the arguments are for the formula, so you can always rely on that. So it says number, so we're going to select the number that we want ranked. And then the basically the reference range that we want to use to rank. I'm going to lock those, and then I'm going to close it. So vendor 1 is our 7th highest. Vendor 4 is our number 1 highest. Okay. So now we have kind of a nice little layout here that allows us to have a sense of, our vendors, our performance, how much of our spend each one, is responsible for. Another fun thing now that we have this rank column is we can sort. So the easy way to sort is to go to the data part of Excel's ribbon and click sort. And you can sort by the rank. And we'll go smallest to largest so that we can get the highest rank up high first. And there we go. We have now ranked our vendors, and now we have a cumulative assessment of these vendors, so such that we can see our top 5 vendors made up 72% of our purchases this year and 70% last year.